going to ask Wade to come up here in a second and give you a short summary of the power of the Rules Committee and Pete's role in it. But again, the underlying issue is the dissolution of the rule of law and leadership's failure to appreciate the very high threat level that is involved. In the words of Todd Beamer, let's roll.
Hey.
This will be pretty brief, but essentially the Rules Committee is a committee that considers all the bills that are getting ready to go onto the floor. And they can set up kind of the process by which bills will enter the floor and how amendments can be added. And so the Rules Committee chairman is essentially an arm of Republican leadership, because the Speaker of the House actually appoints the Rules Committee chairman himself, or herself, depending on who's in charge. So as Rules Committee chairman, Pete Sessions is considered de facto Republican leadership, and part of that gives him broad authority to kind of determine what gets to the floor, what doesn't, what amendments are going to go through, whether it's a closed rule, which means no amendments can be added once it goes to the floor, whether it's a modified rule or an open rule. And so that's kind of a very brief background on the Rules Committee, and unless there's any questions about the Rules Committee, I'm going to go ahead and pass this back on. I went over the basics of the Rules Committee. Are there any additional questions on kind of the basic structure?
Any questions? Sir?
If Pete Sessions was to say, I'm not going to bring this Obamacare thing to the floor, can Pointer then immediately replace him?
The Rules Committee chairman can be replaced. However, that position allows that member of Congress to really do a lot to advance or hinder conservative principles. Now, if Representative Sessions went way out and just was doing a whole bunch of stuff against Speaker Boehner, Speaker Boehner could replace him. But like we saw with Mike Pence before, back in the day, Mike Pence would get out ahead of these issues and really lay out a kind of conservative narrative that would kind of lock up leadership and kind of force them to take the issue in the direction it needs to go. So that is a powerful Rules Committee chairman. I'm not saying this is or isn't happening, but a powerful Rules Committee chairman can do a lot to either advance conservative principles or to hinder conservative principles.
Yeah, quick one here. Quick one here. Pete has mentioned in some of his talks before that one of his jobs as Rules Committee chairman is if he sees something that is blatantly unconstitutional, he has the right to simply never bring it to the floor. This particularly came up with some of the Second Amendment issues. Would you agree with his interpretation?
It is accurate that the Rules Committee chairman can keep legislation from going to the floor if, for essentially whatever reason they deem. They can just decide they don't like the name of the bill and not allow it to go forward in a lot of respects. They exercise a huge amount of power, which is why that position is so important. So yes, if something's unconstitutional, the Rules Committee chairman could stop it from moving to the floor. Now, the Rules Committee chairman might be replaced, and they might call for it, or they could use a discharge petition or a whole bunch of other methods to get it back. But yes, essentially yes, the Rules Committee chairman could.
Thank you.
Did Pete Sessions agree to come tonight?
No. We asked several times.
I just need to make sure that we have
No, he didn't. We asked him, and each time he said his schedule wouldn't allow him to speak. Great. Okay, well, without further ado, we have three topics: Benghazi, defunding Obamacare, and illegal immigration and amnesty. I think let's have Scott, if you would come up here and address Benghazi, and then I think that Ken is going to have a few remarks on Benghazi, and then we'll open it up. Oh, by the way, we found this cell phone. Does it look like any of yours? Look at all those people reach into their pockets. All right, well, if anybody finds out during the course of the evening that they're missing a cell phone, it's up here. This is an AT&T Pantech phone. You? And the lucky winner is? There you go.
We have a winner. Name is Scott Franklin. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. To address the question a moment ago with some specificity about the invitation to Pete members of his staff. There are several of us in the room, but I in particular made no fewer than 3 calls. Having talked to Pete's staff, I mean, I know Pete. I feel comfortable with him and his staff, and explain why we thought it was important that he would attend a town hall meeting of his time, his choosing, his location, and we would have been happy to accommodate that. But given the assault under which we believe the rule of law currently stands, we thought it was kind of important that he would be here. And I was advised that he would not be holding a town hall meeting out of consideration for the parents of back-to-school children, because it might, I can't make this stuff up, okay? I can't make this up. And so when you tried to pin him down between when's the back-to-school date and when does he go back to Washington and can he or will he, the answer was still no. Now, I have some mixed feelings about being here with any purpose of ridicule for Pete. What I'd like to do is present some facts as I see them. I've come to know the congressman really only since I became focused on political issues intently, which began April the 15th of 2009. Many of you I know were there that day downtown at City Hall. But I will say that in fairness to Pete and all that we may want to offer as criticism, that he has made himself available. He's been available to no fewer than 4 Tea Party meetings since January. He's made himself available in small sessions, personal sessions. That was great fun. Thank you. And has even taken 30-minute phone call from a stranger before I became engaged in this curiosity. So I do have to offer that up as our employee, that he has been remarkably available. But what I'd like to turn to is the topic of Benghazi. What difference at this point does it make? That's a question that with which we're all familiar. We know that Hillary Clinton asked that question in response to a question from Ron Johnson. And while I think she had it right with regard to her desire that we get to the bottom of this, I think she had it wrong in terms of what difference does it make. What happens at Benghazi really is important, and it does make a difference. This is but one element that we'll talk about tonight, and what I'd like you to do is put your Imagineering hats on for a minute, and imagine that this wall behind me is a dike or a large wall, and behind that large wall is a huge reservoir of water. Over here is a hole in that wall called Benghazi, and it's beginning to leak. That wall is actually to our rule of law. It is based upon the Constitution. Benghazi begins to be one of the holes in that wall. Several others are going to be discussed. I would offer that something like NSA